Black Maid slipped a note to the Mafia boss. Your fiancé betrayed you. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Jasmine Blackwell, the housemaid, was moving quietly through the grand mansion of the Romano family, cleaning the marble floors and dusting off priceless antiques. As usual, she kept her head down, blending in with the opulence of the space. But today was different. She had overheard something that sent chills down her spine. It was the kind of conversation you weren't meant to hear. The voice of Samantha Devereux, the fiancée of the Mafia boss, Dominic Romano, had slipped through the cracks as she spoke on the phone. Samantha's words were clear, and Jasmine's heart sank as she realized the truth. Samantha was planning to betray Dominic. The fiancé, who everyone believed was loyal and in love with Dominic, was secretly working against him. Jasmine's mind raced. She knew she couldn't just let this go. Dominic was a powerful man, feared and respected by all. But he was also blind to the woman he was about to marry. Jasmine had always kept her distance, knowing her place as the help. But today, something inside her shifted. She couldn't let Dominic walk into a trap. She couldn't allow him to marry a woman who was plotting his downfall. As she continued her duties, she carefully wrote a note. Her hands trembled slightly as she penned the simple, yet damning message. Asterisk, your fiancé betrayed you. Asterisk, it wasn't much, but it was enough to change everything. The note felt like a weight in her pocket, a dangerous secret she was about to deliver. Jasmine knew the risks. She wasn't supposed to speak to Dominic unless spoken to, let alone hand him a note. But something inside her told her it was the right thing to do. Her heart pounded as she walked toward the study, where Dominic was seated behind a large desk, discussing business with his associates. His cold, calculating gaze briefly met hers as she approached. For a moment, she froze. There was no turning back now. She quickly handed him the note, her hands shaking as she did. Dominic glanced at her, his expression unreadable. His icy demeanor never faltered, but Jasmine could feel the weight of his gaze. He took the note, unfolded it, and read the message. For a long moment, he didn't speak, his eyes scanning the words as if trying to make sense of what he had just read. His face remained stoic, but Jasmine saw the brief flicker of confusion in his eyes. She didn't know what he would do next, but she knew one thing for sure. Everything was about to change. Dominic stared at the note in his hands, his gaze fixed on the words as if they held the key to unlocking a secret he had been blind to. The room was silent, the only sound being the quiet hum of the air conditioning as it circulated through the luxurious study. Jasmine stood in front of him, her heart racing in her chest. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if he was angry or shocked or confused. She had done what she thought was right, but now, with the weight of his gaze on her, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just changed everything. After what felt like an eternity, Dominic finally looked up. His sharp eyes locked onto hers, and for the briefest moment, Jasmine felt as though he could see right through her. "What is this?" he asked, his voice cold but steady. Jasmine's throat went dry. She had prepared for this moment, but now that it was here, she found herself struggling to find the right words. I overheard something," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but your fiancée, Samantha, she's planning something. Something you wouldn't want to know about." Dominic's brow furrowed slightly. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Jasmine took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had already come this far, and there was no turning back now. "She's betraying you," she said, her words coming out in a rush. "I heard her talking to someone. She's been scheming behind your back." For a moment, Dominic didn't say anything. His eyes didn't leave her face, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind. Was he angry? Confused? Jasmine couldn't tell. But then, something changed. His expression softened, just slightly. It was as though, for the first time, he was seeing her not just as the help, but as someone who had risked everything to give him a warning. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. "I don't know what to say." Jasmine nodded, not sure what to do next. "I didn't want to get involved," she whispered. but I couldn't just stand by and watch you get hurt. Dominic stood up and walked towards the window, his hands clasped behind his back. He stared out at the sprawling estate, the view of the garden and the distant horizon. The weight of the moment seemed to settle around him like a heavy fog. He turned to face Jasmine once again. I have to deal with this, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. I need to think. Jasmine nodded again, silently. She had done what she could, and now it was up to him to decide how to handle it. But as she turned to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would change everything, not just for Dominic, but for her as well. She had stepped into a world she never thought she would be a part of, and now, there was no going back. The next morning, Jasmine could hardly focus on her work. The mansion, usually a place of calm and routine, felt different now. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside, seemed charged with tension. She tried to go about her duties as usual, but her mind kept drifting back to the moment when she had handed Dominic the note. She had warned him, and now, she couldn't help but wonder what he was going to do. Would he confront Samantha? Would he believe her? Or would he dismiss it as a lie? As she cleaned the grand hallway, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Dominic walking toward her, his expression unreadable as usual. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and she felt a strange surge of emotion. He was the boss, the powerful man everyone feared. But in that moment, she saw something else, something vulnerable. Jasmine, he said, his voice low. She straightened up, her heart racing. Yes, Mr. Romano, she replied, her voice steady despite the nerves that gripped her. He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. I need to speak with you, he said. Jasmine's stomach flipped. She had no idea what was coming next. She followed him silently as he led her to his study, the very room where she had handed him the note just hours before. The door clicked shut behind them, and they stood facing each other. I've thought about what you told me, Dominic began, his voice calm but firm. I've had my suspicions about Samantha for a while now, but hearing it from you. He trailed off, shaking his head slightly. Jasmine held her breath, waiting for him to continue. You've put yourself in a difficult position, he said, his eyes narrowing slightly. I'm not sure what your intentions are, but I'm going to take what you said seriously. I've already started looking into it. Jasmine's heart sank. She didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. She had never expected to be involved in something like this, especially not with someone like Dominic. But now, her actions were out of her hands. I don't want to make things harder for you, Dominic continued. But I can't ignore what you've said. I need to know if it's true. Jasmine nodded, unable to find the words. The weight of the situation was too much to bear. Dominic took a step closer, his gaze softening. I don't trust many people, Jasmine, he said, his voice quieter now. But I trust you. You did the right thing. His words left her stunned. She had expected anger, or even betrayal, but instead, he was thanking her. I don't know how this will end, Dominic added, his tone serious. But whatever happens, know that you've done something important. Jasmine's mind raced. She had never imagined that a simple act of honesty would lead to this moment, where she was standing in the middle of a power struggle between the Mafia boss and his fiancée. But now that she had set everything in motion, she couldn't back out. She was in this, whether she liked it or not. I'll do whatever I can to help, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Dominic gave a small nod, then turned toward the door. We'll see how things unfold, he said. In the meantime, keep your distance. This is a delicate matter. Jasmine nodded again, her mind still reeling from the conversation. As she left the study, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same. She had warned Dominic, and now, she had to wait and see what his next move would be. But one thing was clear, she was no longer just a maid in this mansion. She was part of something much bigger now. Days passed, and the mansion seemed quieter than usual. Jasmine continued with her duties, but everything had changed. She no longer felt like just an observer of the world around her. Instead, she felt like she was entangled in something much bigger, something she couldn't escape from, no matter how hard she tried. She often found herself stealing glances at Dominic, noticing the subtle shifts in his behavior. His movements were more deliberate, his eyes more focused, as if he had something weighing heavily on his mind. Jasmine couldn't help but wonder how he was dealing with the revelation about Samantha. Had he confronted her yet? What was his plan? But she kept her distance, as Dominic had asked her to. She couldn't afford to get too involved. The last thing she wanted was to draw any more attention to herself. One afternoon, as she was cleaning the library, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She turned to see Dominic standing in the doorway, his expression serious. "Jasmine," he said, his voice low. "I need you to come with me. There's something we need to discuss." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what to expect, but she followed him silently, her nerves fraying with each step. They walked through the grand hallways, the soft echo of their footsteps the only sound in the otherwise quiet mansion. Finally, they reached Dominic's study, the room where everything had changed. Dominic opened the door and motioned for her to come inside. "I've taken action," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of something darker beneath the surface. "I've confronted Samantha, and I know everything now." Jasmine felt a knot form in her stomach. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but hearing those words made it all feel too real. "What's going to happen now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dominic turned to face her, his gaze intense. "I'm going to deal with it," he said. "Simply. But I wanted you to know that you were right. I trusted you." Jasmine felt a rush of relief wash over her, but it was quickly followed by an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. She had done what she thought was right, but now, she wasn't sure where it would lead. Dominic stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've already made arrangements," he continued. "I need your help, Jasmine. You've proven yourself to be trustworthy, and I need someone I can rely on right now." Jasmine's heart pounded in her chest. She had never imagined this moment, never imagined being a part of the inner workings of Dominic's world. But here she was, standing in front of the most powerful man she had ever known, being asked for help. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Dominic looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I need you to help me keep things under control," he said. "There are people watching, and I need to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Can I count on you?" Jasmine nodded, her heart racing. She didn't know what she had gotten herself into, but she knew one thing. Her life had just changed forever. There was no going back now. "I think you've earned my trust now, Jasmine," Dominic said, his voice steady, though there was something intense in his eyes as he spoke. "You've proven yourself, and that's not something I take lightly." Jasmine swallowed hard, still trying to wrap her mind around what had just happened. She was standing in the study of a man she had always seen as untouchable. The powerful Mafia boss, Dominic Romano, had just asked her to help him navigate a dangerous situation. "Thank you, Mr. Romano," she replied, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. She had never imagined this moment, never thought she would be the one he would turn to. Dominic gave a small nod. "I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Jasmine. This is bigger than what you think. There are people involved, people who won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to protect their interests. This could get ugly." Jasmine's heart raced as she processed his words. She had known that Dominic's world wasn't one of innocence, but hearing him speak of it so bluntly made it all feel so much more real. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice unwavering. Dominic studied her for a moment, his gaze unreadable. "I need you to stay close, keep an eye on things, and make sure nothing goes wrong. I trust you, Jasmine, but you need to be careful. There are people in this house, even among my own circle, who will stop at nothing to maintain control." Jasmine nodded, understanding the weight of what he was asking. She had never been involved in anything like this before, but she knew she had to be careful. She was already deeper into this than she had ever expected. Dominic turned away, his hands clasped behind his back as he walked toward the window. "I've been dealing with betrayal from all sides, Jasmine," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I'm not sure who to trust anymore. But you've shown me something different." Jasmine's mind raced, wondering just how deep this situation really went. She had helped him once by warning him about Samantha, but now, she was being drawn even further into this dangerous world. Dominic turned back to face her, his expression serious. "I need to know I can count on you. Can I?" Jasmine's stomach churned, the weight of the question pressing down on her. She knew this wasn't just about loyalty anymore. It was about survival. "You can count on me," she replied, her voice steady. Dominic gave a slight smile, though there was little warmth in it. "Good," he said, his tone softening just a little. "This isn't going to be easy, Jasmine, but you've got what it takes." Jasmine didn't know if she truly had what it took, But she wasn't about to back out now. She had already stepped into this world, and there was no turning back. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice firm. Dominic's gaze softened slightly, as if he had been waiting for her response. He nodded. "I'll keep you informed. You'll know what's going on as things unfold." As she left his study, Jasmine's thoughts were a whirlwind. She had no idea how far she would have to go or what she would face, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life had changed forever. She was no longer just a maid in a mansion. She was now part of something far more dangerous, something that would test her strength and her loyalty like never before. Days passed, and the tension in the mansion only grew thicker. Jasmine did her best to keep up with her duties, but her mind was always elsewhere, watching, listening, waiting. She had learned to read the small signs, the way people's eyes darted nervously, the slight tension in their voices, the hushed whispers in the corners of the grand house. Dominic had entrusted her with something she had never imagined herself being a part of, and she couldn't turn back now. One evening, as she was preparing to retire to her room after a long day, she was stopped by a soft knock on the door. It was Dominic. His face was as unreadable as ever, but there was something different in his eyes, something urgent. "Jasmine, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low but firm. Jasmine felt her heart skip a beat. She had no idea what to expect, but she followed him down the hall toward his study. As they entered the room, Dominic closed the door behind them with a quiet click. "I've been hearing things," he began, his eyes searching hers for a moment before he continued. "Whispers, rumors. People are getting nervous, Jasmine. They know something's changing. They're starting to question me." Jasmine stood still, trying to understand where this conversation was headed. Dominic, the man who controlled so much, who exuded power, was now speaking in a way that revealed vulnerability. She had never seen him like this before. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "There are factions within my own circle that are starting to doubt my decisions," he explained. "Samantha's betrayal is just the beginning. People are seeing weakness in me, and they're ready to exploit it. I need to know where you stand. I need to know if I can trust you, Jasmine." His words hit her like a wave, and for a brief moment, she was at a loss for words. Could she trust him? Had she not already proved herself by stepping into the lion's den and offering him the warning? Yet now, it felt like the stakes were even higher. She had seen the fear behind his cold exterior, and it made her wonder just how far this would go. "You have my trust, Mr. Romano," she said finally, her voice steady but filled with more uncertainty than she cared to admit. Dominic's gaze softened slightly, and he nodded, as if taking comfort in her words. "I'm counting on you," he said quietly. "I need you to be my eyes, Jasmine. Watch the others closely. They're all under suspicion now, and I can't afford to make any mistakes." Jasmine felt the weight of his request settle heavily on her shoulders. She had already been pulled into this web, but now, it felt like there was no way out. "I'll do everything I can to help," she said, her words firm, though her mind was racing. Dominic looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and expectation, as if her response had meant more than she realized. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, his voice softening just a little. "But remember, this is bigger than just us. It's about power, control, and the people who want to tear it all down." Jasmine nodded, but in the depths of her heart, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. The walls of the mansion, once a symbol of luxury and safety, now felt like they were closing in. She was no longer just a maid, carrying out simple tasks. She had become an unwilling participant in a dangerous game, a game where betrayal lurked around every corner, and trust was the most fragile currency. As she left the study, the weight of the task ahead pressed on her like a heavy cloak. She couldn't help but wonder how long it would be before the situation took an even darker turn. The more she learned, the more she realized just how little she truly knew about the world she had stepped into. But there was no going back now. Jasmine was in this for the long haul, whether she was ready or not. Jasmine woke up early the next morning, her mind swirling with the events of the previous day. Dominic had entrusted her with a task that seemed simple at first, but now felt like a heavy responsibility. She was to keep watch over the people around her, to gather information without drawing attention. It was a role she never expected to play, but now it seemed like the only way to protect herself and Dominic from the storm brewing beneath the surface. As she moved through the mansion, She kept her eyes and ears open, watching the others with a new level of suspicion. The house was full of whispers, secret conversations, and furtive glances exchanged behind closed doors. It was impossible to ignore the tension that seemed to hang in the air, thick and heavy like a storm cloud. Jasmine wasn't sure who she could trust, but she knew one thing for certain. Things were about to change. Later that day, as she was cleaning the kitchen, she overheard something that made her blood run cold. It was a conversation between two of the house staff, and from the sound of it, they were discussing something that wasn't meant for her ears. "Do you think Dominic knows?" one of the women asked in a hushed tone. "He's been acting strange lately. He doesn't trust anyone, not even his own people." The other woman replied, her voice barely above a whisper, "He's been talking to Victor too much. I heard they're planning something big. It's all about the power, you know? And Samantha, well, she's not part of it anymore." Jasmine's heart raced as she processed the conversation. Was Dominic planning something more? Was the power struggle reaching its boiling point? And what did Samantha have to do with all of this? Jasmine didn't have all the answers, but she knew she had to stay alert. As the days went on, the mansion's atmosphere became more tense. People were on edge, and Jasmine could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on everyone. She saw Dominic more often now, his presence commanding the room as he moved through the house. His eyes were sharper than ever, constantly scanning the faces of those around him, searching for any sign of betrayal. Jasmine could see the toll it was taking on him, but he never let it show. He had become a man on a mission, and she knew he was determined to protect what was his, at any cost. One evening, as she was finishing up her work, Dominic stopped her in the hallway. His face was serious, and his voice was low. "I need you to do something for me, Jasmine," he said. "I'm counting on you more than ever now." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat, and she nodded. "What do you need, Mr. Romano?" she asked, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. He leaned in slightly, his gaze intense. "I need you to keep an eye on Victor. He's too close to the situation, and I'm not sure if I can trust him anymore. I need to know what he's really planning." Jasmine swallowed hard. She had heard the whispers about Victor, and now she had to watch him closely. "I understand," she said quietly, nodding. "I'll keep an eye on him." Dominic's expression softened for a moment, as if he appreciated her loyalty. "I trust you, Jasmine," he said, before turning to leave. As she watched him walk away, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control. She had been thrust into a world of power, betrayal, and secrets, and there was no going back. She had already crossed the line, and now she had to navigate this dangerous game carefully. But no matter how hard she tried to prepare herself, she couldn't help but wonder what would happen if she made the wrong move. Would Dominic still trust her? Would she survive this world that was growing darker by the day? Only time would tell, and Jasmine knew she had to stay sharp if she wanted to make it out of this alive. Jasmine's task to watch over Victor was more complicated than she had expected. Every interaction with him now felt like a tightrope walk, with every word he spoke analyzed, every glance he gave carefully measured. She knew that Dominic was relying on her, but the weight of his trust felt heavy on her shoulders. Victor had a way of making her feel uncomfortable, his charming smile hiding a sharp edge. As days passed, Jasmine began noticing small things. Victor's meetings with other associates were more frequent. His conversations with Samantha seemed to carry more weight. It wasn't the kind of thing you could point to directly, but Jasmine's instincts told her something was brewing, and it wasn't good. One night, after her shift, she overheard a conversation between Victor and another man in the hallway. "It's almost time." Victor's voice was low, filled with quiet urgency. "Everything is set. We just need to move quickly." Jasmine's heart pounded as she stood just outside the door, trying to remain as still as possible. She couldn't make out the other man's voice, but the words, "everything is set," echoed in her mind. She didn't know exactly what Victor was planning, but she was certain it wasn't good. The next morning, Jasmine knew she had to tell Dominic. There was no more time to waste. She couldn't risk waiting any longer, and she couldn't risk Dominic's safety. As soon as she saw him, she felt the familiar tension rise in her chest. "Mr. Romano," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I overheard something last night. Victor and someone else, there's something happening. They're making plans, and I don't think it's good." Dominic's eyes hardened immediately. "Tell me exactly what you heard," he said, his voice steady but with a trace of urgency. Jasmine explained everything, as much as she could recall. She watched Dominic's face carefully as she spoke. He didn't react outwardly, but there was a shift in his demeanor, a flicker of something dark in his eyes. "I've been expecting this," he said quietly when she finished. "Victor has been playing both sides. I've known for a while, but it's clear now. He's plotting against me." Jasmine felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't realized just how deep the treachery went. Dominic continued, his voice cold. "We'll handle it, but I need you to stay vigilant. If you hear anything else, you let me know immediately. Understand?" Jasmine nodded, her mind racing. "Yes, Mr. Romano," she said, trying to steady her nerves. Dominic's eyes softened for just a moment, and he gave her a small nod of approval. "Good. I knew I could count on you." She felt a surge of pride in his words, but it was quickly overshadowed by the unease that had settled in her stomach. Everything she had feared was starting to come true. The mansion, once a symbol of power and security, now felt like a prison. Every corner seemed to hold secrets, and Jasmine had no idea who could be trusted. As she left Dominic's study, she felt the weight of the situation bearing down on her. She had been pulled into something far more dangerous than she could have imagined, and there was no turning back now. She had already crossed a line, and now it was her job to help keep the pieces from falling apart. But as she walked down the hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to escalate. Nothing would ever be the same, and she had no idea where this path would lead.